Okay, maybe the gentleman gets an applause for organizing this event in the first place, because it's plenty of work to get so much competence in this place. Well, getting them, but we have received such a lot of input already, diverse input, and it's really serving our cause. Well, Stephan, let me present him briefly. He is the owner of the Glucker Kolleg, a sports teacher, physiotherapist. You train, well, top athletes up to the Olympic medalist, world champions. He does nutritional, well, consulting. Well, he is all in one, so to speak. Like a Swiss Army knife, you have got a widespread competence here. He also comes to our ERD buffet as a fitness expert, and then he's also a member of the expert, advisory council for the fitness and health branch, and then, also a chair of the Federal Association of Personal Trainers. And then we've got Professor Wolfgang Kemmler here, professor at the Institute of Medical Physics in Erlangen-Nuremberg at the university. You conduct clinical studies focusing on sports and physical training. There will be a follow-up presentation later on. You publish quite a lot in terms of EMS also. And now we will first of all talk about a DIN standard, a certification, a Radiation Protection Ordinance that will take effect in 2021. And for this purpose, we've got Lars Kröger. He's the head of the certification body at BASZ, responsible for, certification of services, personal and standard certifications based on UV radiation protection. This is a highly topical thing. Since March of this year, this has been up to date. So what is it on top to the existing, TÜV Rheinland certification? Is it on top an additional, then ordinance? Yeah.
Hello. This is correct. In this area, there were two things. This is TÜV certification by TÜV Rheinland. This is the precursor, so to speak, and that's a good thing. It also follows in terms of content what the standard prescribes, and this is why it's a good thing. The other side to the medal is the DIN standard for EMS. This is an additional part of the existing 33169 in 3 parts, which was then split up into 4 parts. And the first part is a general part, an overriding part, because it also governs EMS in certification. The second part was health oriented endurance training. 3 is group training, and 4th is equipment-assisted strength training. And now we've got a new 5th part, which is really referring to EMS only. And this is the consistent continuation of the DIN series of standards and of the TÜV certification.
And what does it actually mean? What's written in there? What does this DIN standard regulate?
The DIN standard basically governs the studio furnishing, studio management, then also looks at training elements, the intensity of supervision, and it, of course, is based on the recommendations of the Roundtable on EMS and scientific findings, and what the sectoral experts have worked out together. And maybe when we talk about hazards and source of hazards, I can actually bring this up. If I list it now, it is a little dry and not very exciting. But it is about quality in general, and the equipment pool is taken into consideration. Then, of course, the ratio of supervision to the trained subjects, and, of course, these skill levels of the staff. When we look at reporting or coverage in the media, then you often find features saying, well, I actually tested an industry model in Studio ABC, the equipment didn't work and the staff wasn't skilled, and this is where the standard kicks in, and to provide safety.
And now, as a rule, for somebody who operates a studio, it's a burden to comply with the standard to get certification. Stephan, from your point of view, why is it good nonetheless to have these standards?
Well, the point is that certificates always help to create a framework, because when an industry is free to do what it likes to do, it will do so until the regulator comes in. There's some industries, and you will actually talk about it, like the solarium guys, they didn't do it, and they actually paid for it dearly. The point is to achieve a certain security so that the final user, whether in certification or in DIN standards, can rest assured that a framework has been created, because he doesn't know which studio is a good one or a bad one. I don't enter a studio before I get started. I would like to have the certificates from all of the supervisors. You don't do that. Many final users don't even know what's good or what's bad. They probably heard about it from a physiotherapist or from a sports teacher, or hygiene standards. And this is why standards are really important, in order to ensure a certain level so that customers can be assured that these requirements have been fulfilled, because these requirements or compliance is, of course, checked upon. And we also found this in our expert circle. The EMS industry is a very young one, and many things are being tried out, and as long as there are no fatal accidents, you carry on. But this is exactly what we want to stop.
And what, Mr. Kemmler, was collected there? What input was given? Who was there? Who sat together? Who talked about what such a standard should look like? We were then not directly involved. We provided advice. Well, there are the universities, the training institutes, personal trainers. So whoever, whatever, has to do with EMS apart from the manufacturer, because we want to be an independent body, quite obviously. And then we had developed this guideline at an early stage, responding to the CK problem. I talked to a colleague in Israel, where for 3 months it was simply banned and prohibited. So the DIN needs to come. It's high time. Now we've got a Radiation Protection Ordinance, and now you say, okay, how does this come for, whole body? Well, a Radiation Protection Ordinance, and some colleagues went too far, so that we had the first cases in the media. So it's really high time from our research point of view that something comes. We had a situation, we were looking for test persons, and they said, no, whole body EMS is dangerous. I'm not going to participate in such a study. So we really had to work very hard until we got people to say yes. And we said, well, we evaluated this in a different way. And actually, if things, go according to plan, if you've got reasonable training and reasonable circumstances, it's a good thing to do it. So what does it mean for a studio that wants to get certification? What about the steps involved? What do you have to do?
So if you actually went for certification, you would go through a two-tier process. So you have to ensure the conditions. We actually pursue a cooperative process. The criteria that you have to comply with are included in the DIN standard, and we're not allowed to issue them because these are actually issued by the institute, by the DIN Standard Institute, and you have to buy it. If I distributed it, I would actually violate copyright laws. But I can, of course, tell everyone what needs to be complied with. This is not the secret. And everyone who actually joins us is informed corresponding. If somebody says yes, we actually send a checklist. And this means that he or she has to compile certain documents. There's an explanation what needs to be compiled. This is the contract. This is a hygiene plan. all of the things that need to be ensured. A price list, for instance. We need an overview of all of the employees. Then there's skill levels. The DIN standard also requires an instructor, if the studio wants to be certified, has undergone training in training science, so a B license or comparable licenses, and a specific EMS qualification. We check this qualification. These documents are submitted, we check them, and if there's anything missing, then we would actually network with the customer, and everything looks okay, then we make an on-site appointment, have a look at it, and the documents are verified as random checks. What do we do on site? Well, we're always watching one training, one session. We always make sure that the escape routes are in existence, then the fire extinguisher. We wouldn't check anything that is not included in the DIN standard. Whether we have a first aid kit, for instance, who all of the instructors have undergone first aid training that needs to be updated every 2 years. Has everybody been given a fire protection training? You might think, oh, nobody needs this. Yes, you need it, whether you are certified or not, because this is part of your labor law in Germany. Every employer needs to have fully trained first aiders. And if this is all okay, then we issue our certificate. If there are minor deviations, then we would actually include it in a report for people to remedy this. If a Band-Aid is missing, for instance, we would ask them, how long does it actually take you to get this Band-Aid? Then they would send us actually the receipt for buying it. We would then issue the certificate plus a little, and you're allowed to use the logo then. You can actually use it for promotion purposes. And there's also a little explanation video where you can build in the logo of the studio, which you can also use for social media. It is a little bit of work, but it helps you to stand out from your competitors, and you can actually build trust with your potential customers and with authorities.
And if I got you right, it's a voluntary certification. It's not obligatory. You can do it. And then, of course, there is an advantage. You stand out from your competitors. You can use it for advertising purposes. The customer knows they take well care of me. But for the studio operator, there's also a legal framework, a sound basis. They know when I comply with this, I am in a legally protected area and nobody can get me there. Well, is this the case? Well, basically, this is also good for the studio operator. Right, a win-win.
Absolutely. I actually came to the trade fair on Thursday, and I heard that a couple actually sued a school during sports because the sports teacher actually did not do any heart massage, and the boy actually remained physically handicapped for the rest of his life. And this is why the parents have now sued the college. And this is exactly what you want to avoid. You need to have first aid people fully trained. This is included in part 1 of the DIN standard. And you also have to update these skills, and you need to actually provide evidence of this. So with the customer, you would actually go through a health sheet. There are certain health assistance requirements that you need to comply, because it's a case of liability. If you prepared well enough, then you can't be held liable.
A few words on the radiation protection regulation that will come into force as of 2021. Professor Kemmler mentioned it before. It's also important to have it. Stephan, if you could continue on that, I would like to add something and take Wolfgang on board. In 2021, we will have the legal obligation to fulfill the Radiation Protection Ordinance. Nobody will be able to escape. Wolfgang, in October, it was then released as as prior information, preliminary information. Maybe you could also elaborate a tiny little bit. Indeed, in December it was, so the amendment was then released. It's not all fixed and certain. We can still have a say in terms of training. We were invited to comment. In particular, it's more complicated than the DIN in terms of training. In other areas not. But the point is, it's binding, right? This one you can do, but the Radiation Protection Ordinance is a must. We, as a university institute, we've got quite a lot to do with X-rays, radiation, with computer tomography, and whenever we conduct a new study, we have to write to the Federal Office of Radiological Protection. It costs us 2,500 euros each time. But it's not welcome. But there were some colleagues who went overboard and did exaggerated, so that the state felt obliged to step in, unfortunately. It's, what I would like to add right here, everybody should prick their ears. 2021, this is when the hammer will come down on you, and then the regulations for the Radiation Protection Ordinance will be a law. It will be obligatory, and if you, violate it, they will close down your business, and it has got this legislative power. And so it's got that the DIN standard wakes up people, and there you are safe. And once you take this as a line of orientation, you are safe, no problem left there, well prepared, and at the latest in 2021 you have to do it anyway. So right here you've got another 2 years in terms of time. And it's not a Damocles sword. It's not that. It's only specifically trained and qualified. We can go through the EMS side. This is what we avoided. This would have been a killer criterion if only physiotherapists could have done it and worked as trainers in EMS studios. This is what we could avoid. It's a smaller criterion, this DIN standard C trainer with 120 hours of training, and then you can start the training, and takes longer than the DIN. But it's all feasible. We do not want to spread any fear. Right here, it's still doable, but then it will be fixed, unavoidable. We see it with a laughing and a crying eye. One sentence you would like to pass on to everybody, saying you have to know this in order to round it all off. I can only recommend to you, I come from a certification body, I can only recommend you to obtain the certification. Why? For 2 reasons. We've got 2 programs. The other one is UV protection, and there, unfortunately, the UV protection regulation made very strict, imposed very strict provisions on the solar studios, up to the content that has to be conveyed. Each and every studio has to be specifically qualified and certified. Staff has to be open during all the open. It has to be present during the opening hours, and the training is 12. It's plenty of hours. You have to prove that you have this advisory talks. There are documentation obligations. There has been market purification, and the market is reduced. All the self-service parts were taken out because there's no consultation, or an alternative would have been to think about it. They are no longer part of public swimming pools. They couldn't have done it in terms of personnel, and the UV protection regulation could have been done differently, but you should embark on the path of certification, in my opinion, and also make sure that you've got the right certification. This is an official DIN standard. And who does it? We, as to UV protection. You are only allowed to certify when the German accreditation body accredited you. And we ourselves are monitored annually by the accreditation agency, not only with regard to UV protection, but we also do it with regard to the DIN 33961. These are the rules of the game in terms of certification. Should you have further questions, you will be available there outside at the information desk in the foyer. There are plenty of questions, but looking at my watch, I would continue with our agenda. And should you have questions, if you could just ask him outside. So thank you very much, Mr. Kröger. Thank you very much, Stephan. And I think Professor Kemmler can stay right here. Do you want to add something? Well, I would like to add the following. What it is about is no matter which way we walk, it's the most reasonable thing to show what you've got towards the end customer. Often these customers are not aware of these things, but they heard about a DIN standard. They know the TÜV, the certification body. When we say we've got a certificate, EMS fit, they ask, where did you get it from? And once you've got your clients, you can set up a certain framework saying we comply with these and these provisions. It will help you think about what's going to happen. It will then concern you and affect you at the very latest as of 2021. I think it's good for the industry because a certain framework is set up in order to avoid adverse impact on the clients. We had one case in Israel. In Israel, there was somebody from the health ministry. He received training and was overpaced by an unqualified instructor. What happened was there was a news spread via the news and TVs that EMS was risky for danger, and within 4 weeks the market was dead. And we would like to avoid just that because we think it's gross, it's great, this training. We think it's super. And the solarium market there, the legislator went along because everybody did what they wanted and they came up with regulations, strict regulations. And I think last 70% of these solarium operators, were down to 50%, were gone. Okay. And this is what we would like to avoid for EMS. And bad news, stays longer than good news. Nobody asks how many thousands of people train well, and the two critical cases are the ones that pop up also when you are in the media looking around in the search engine and it's damaging your image. So it's, doing something positive.